Hi, class. I am broadcasting to you from home for this special kind of video lecture that, replaces, I guess if you could say, our typical Wednesday meeting because I hope you had a good time and actually talked to some people, collected information about different companies, and understood more about what you're about to face as you get closer to graduation, thinking about internships and grad school as well at the career fair Wednesday. So I hope that was great. This video serves as really what I had planned, what we were going to do on Wednesday. So do watch to the end and complete the activity so that way when we come back together next week we can pick up right where we left off. And I'm pretty excited because we are going to do a real campaign. We're just going to build it together and it's going to run through my kind of brand new Instagram account that I created, so that way we can also just see some insights in what it's like to sort of have a campaign that we build from vision, goals, and we're going to go through all the campaign planning steps in October, early part of November. We'll push out, at least 3, maybe 4 weeks of content through the platform, and then during our finals time, after we give our pitch presentations, we can look back and just kind of reflect on how it went, how it's going, and how you can do the same thing for your own, social media accounts, and kind of your own personal goals and lives. All right, let's go. I'll put myself up here in the corner. Sounds good. So just like every class, here's the question. Obviously, you can't pause me and answer this. And this is the same question that you do need to actually respond to on the discussion post as part of this class activity. So I had asked you last week to look through my creative brief that I had created for this YouTube kind of campaign that I've been thinking about and starting to pitch to kind of my supervisor and various stakeholders. And again, briefs are just that initial thing to get approval, but also serve as that really nice document to return to whenever you're like, wait, what were we doing again? As you then start to think about, a more formalized proposal. And so as you're going through it, I just asked you to really think about what were some bright spots, right? Where are some places where you're like, oh, okay, yes, I see, how I could have maybe improved or written my own strategy a little bit differently. And what were some growth areas? Where were some places where you're like, I still don't know what you're talking about. What is all of this about? And so think about that for a second. Jot it down or go ahead and respond to that piece of it in the discussion post. But really the point of that activity is, sometimes when we read other people's stuff, and again, we read it with that intention to provide feedback, it helps us see more clearly things that we are doing or aren't doing on our own work. And so that's, just a very real life example, something I'm turning into actual, supervisors with high stakes. And so that's why I wanted to show it to you. But I also wanted, and I will talk about this again next week, but I wanted to show you another just quick example. So I was asked by my boss to redesign a website. And so I wrote up a creative brief as well. Obviously, this one is a lot less kind of polished. It was something, I used this template for a lot of things when it's just like, it's a quick project. Like this isn't something I need to even do a proposal on. It really was just to help me and her talk through what she expected on that website redesign. And so we can go over this more next week with the doc cam. But like literally that template comes in handy for all sorts of projects. And so I did everything in blue. And then after talking with her, I wrote that in black. So we can kind of talk about how the creative brief helped me in this actual, my job. Again, all of this is applicable. I don't want you to just be doing random work that doesn't mean anything in the job and in the workforce. And so this simple kind of template definitely helps with any type of project, especially. All right, let's move on. There we go. Okay. So just a few key points. Again, we'll talk about this a lot more, but last week we really were talking all about environmental scans and SWOT analyses. And so that's what I want you to focus on, and what we're going to do as our like activity today is kind of going over that idea of like why environmental scans are important, why we want to identify things like strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And so your mini project, which is now due October 24th, is to actually do the environmental scan for your industry that your campaign, proposal is going to be within. And so I have already posted an example. It's women to women's environmental scan, actually. And so definitely, read through that to get an example, an idea of in practice. But really, environmental scans are just really considering doing some actual research, having some sources there to help you understand what is the legal climate, if that applies, what's the political climate, what are kind of the consumer behaviors, what's the economic climate like. There's a lot of different aspects of the environment that you want to think about, and so it really is up to you to, one, identify which ones apply to your campaign most closely, which ones are going to have some bearing on your content, and that's where your own great critical thinking comes in. Like, you can identify that, and then taking some time to actually explain, what that is and how it could impact the work that you're doing. And so that was last week, and then this week is all about audience analysis. And for this week, as hopefully you've already looked at on your To Do on Monday tab, I did post that podcast lecture with actual slides in a Slido deck. So as you're listening to the podcast, you could follow along with the slides and then do some activities. So I hope that helped really orient you to the audience analysis a bit better. And the big takeaway, the actual thing that you need to remember and leave this class with when it comes to audience, is writing a 1 to 2 sentence profile of who you imagine the audience to be, because that's what's going to resonate with clients and stakeholders and your team, and really provide that kind of guiding framework. And so next week on this campaign, my Instagram, we'll together be writing out our audience persona, so we're all on the same page. But this week we're focusing on the SWOT analysis. And since this is a personal Instagram account, not a client and a brand, a full, environmental scan, like I'll do kind of that work, but it's definitely doesn't need to be as in-depth as obviously if you're working for a very real, brand. And me as your client, lower stakes, right, for a personal blog than for a $1 million company, multi-million-dollar company. So what we actually are going to be doing as the activity, and what we're going to be carrying forward through the rest of October, is writing out the different aspects of that campaign strategy for my @HYLY_B_ABD account on Instagram. It's the one that originally I was going to use it for our class account. But when we, we're such a small group, we only have 3, it didn't really feel appropriate or necessary to use that technique or strategy. That really was something I did for, my classes of 50, just to help have another channel to get information and review content and be accessible. But with only 3, I realized, I don't really need that. So I had already wiped this account clean. So I decided, okay, maybe I'll just start this new kind of professional account. I have been really lost on what actually to post, what to do with it, and that's because I hadn't written out a vision statement. I didn't have goals. I didn't have an idea of who I was trying to talk to, kind of that persona, anything. I hadn't done any strategic planning. So I think this is a great opportunity for us to actually practice and work through it together. And again, we're going to do on my account just so we can have one kind of singular place and go through those motions, and at the end of the semester kind of look back on just how that started. It's also a great way because there's like barely any activity, so if you end up working for a client who also is just starting out, but you can come back to this experience and what we learned together. And then we can also definitely at the end of the semester too, we do a whole week on personal and professional accounts. And so we can apply what we've done on this specific account. You could apply it to your own accounts as well. So I want you to go ahead and find this account, follow it. I'm only on Instagram. My name is Haley in Higher Ed. And I have like a black and white photo of me, so you should be able to find that. And go ahead and follow, so that way you can really see, what's going on in some of the content as you start to develop your SWOT. So, and I had not really had a clear vision of what I wanted to do with it. So I spent kind of the weekend really thinking about, okay, like actually, what is the framework for our strategic planning, right? I can't ask you to come in and try to build me a campaign if I don't have a framework for the planning in place. Remember, our vision statements are, right, that framework for reaching your end game outcomes. It's the framework for your planning. So for this account, what I want you to orient kind of your thinking and our thoughts around is this vision that I have for this maybe account. Maybe it becomes a blog. Again, we'll get to that when we talk about content strategies, but I want to empower those in higher education to build innovative and student-first pedagogy by positioning myself as a successful, knowledgeable, and practice-oriented professor and coach. So that's the vision I want to uphold on this new professional account. Like, I have a completely separate account that's just Haley_B. That's like all my, personal stuff. I still don't really post that much because I don't really like to, but so this is strictly a professional account, and the vision for this professional account is empowering other people in higher ed to really think about student first. Pedagogy is your framework for teaching and instruction. So everybody has a certain pedagogy, and after working, as a success coach and an advisor, I am really passionate about getting more of higher ed and more faculty into this more like student first, let's use more tech and innovation and meet students where they're at type of style for teaching, so pedagogy for teaching. And so I want to do that because I care about higher ed, but I also, am graduating some similar, space as at least a couple of you, right, in class. And so I also am thinking ahead of like, okay, I'm going to start more seriously, thinking about different jobs and applying to maybe be an actual full-time faculty member. And I think this could be a really good thing to have on my profile, like my portfolio. And so I also want to position myself, right, to future employers as successful, knowledgeable, and practice-oriented to really back up, what I'm saying in my cover letter and showcase what my classroom would be like, and hopefully that aligns with the type of classroom they want. So that's the vision statement that we are working within as we come up, literally writing from scratch this campaign strategy. I have 2 goals, and we can definitely workshop some more goals, but really what I want us to do as a class, now I'm providing this foundation, is come up, again, some threats and opportunities and weaknesses this week. Next week, we're going to come up with our audience, our target audience, and write that profile of them. And then the week after that, we're going to come up with our objectives and our KPIs. And then the week after that, we're going to come up with the content strategy, the types of content, and build a calendar. And then the week after that, we'll kind of finalize our calendar, really think about voice, that kind of stuff. And then we'll start posting. We'll start posting the content to that. And so that's kind of my goal. And so we'll have to create a calendar for almost all of November and kind of that first week of December. So, about hopefully like 4 weeks of content. And then, at finals, we'll be able to just kind of look back and see how we did. It's obviously a very small scale version, but again, it's getting kind of a good taste and direction. So I have 2 goals. Really, I want to grow the community size. Again, I literally started this Instagram account in September. So it's only been up for like 2 months. And so you want to grow the community size, actually get some followers, but I do care about the type of community it is, and the awareness. And then 2, because again, brand new account, we just need to establish a baseline for engagement. And that way it's like, okay, next, strategy would be building on that. But for now, I'm like, I don't even know. So we'll establish kind of a baseline for engagement, and then we can think about, some other, another goal possibly, but definitely what the objectives to grow the community size and establish a baseline for engagement means and what we can actually accomplish in 4 weeks. Because if you recall from that video that we watched, part of it is experimenting, especially with a new account. And so we want to kind of experiment, and 2-3 weeks is definitely enough time to start to understand what type of content might work and what might not. All right, so before we get to that objective conversation, what I want us to do, you specifically to do, is research the situation and determine opportunities and threats and weaknesses. And so, again, this little quick lecture is only taking like maybe 20 minutes. So if you spent 30 minutes at the career fair, and then, kind of 20 minutes just listening to me, that still leaves, a little bit of time while we meet for an hour and 15 minutes. And so you still have a good 15-20 minutes to really start digging through. There's not that much content on there, so spend this time to do that activity as if you were in class. And so I want you to explore my current feed and make notes on 3 things in particular that will help you identify the opportunities and weaknesses within the situation, and really serve as this nice low-key situational analysis. And so first, look at the content metrics. So what I have posted already, what stands out as more successful, as not successful, and what is an opportunity, what is maybe a weakness in the content already. 2, similar folks. So try to look and see what other accounts, basically competitor analyses, but what other accounts seem to have the same vision in the space that I need to maybe interact with or at least be aware of. And then 3, who's currently following. What accounts are they? What type of people are they? Because that can also help us just have more context for our audience analysis, and who we want to grow and who we're already attracting with, right, that content that does exist. All of that, and why it's important to do this type of situation analysis, all of that then helps inform our decisions for our actual content strategy. Got it? So go over to HYLY_B_ABD, Haley Higher Ed. Look at my content metrics. Look at what accounts are similar to what our vision is. That's sort of empowering people in higher ed, being a great way to position knowledge, success, practice, oriented pedagogy. And then look at who's currently following, and we'll think about how that aligns with the vision. All right, and that's really it. Again, I want you to actually spend time doing that activity like we would have in class. And just things to keep in mind, you need to respond to the discussion post. That will close on Friday. So Friday midnight, you need to have done this classroom activity. So respond to that discussion post. And then I want you to start thinking about, because next week, again, we're going to get into the audience statements. So start kind of drafting, some of those audience statements for this kind of campaign, but also start drafting your audience statements for your campaign. So I want to talk about both of them. And then start brainstorming some objectives. Again, brainstorm some objectives for this campaign. Start brainstorming some objectives for your campaign as well, because next week the lecture content is going to all be about measurement, evaluation, and objectives are the things that we measure. So start just brainstorming it. But since this week you engaged with all the audience learning materials, I want you to actually draft some of those statements. Capiche? Cool. All right, and to wrap up, impact deck. Take 10 minutes to identify what being a good person means to you. All righty. Thank you, ladies. Thank you, class. I definitely, again, will miss seeing you today if you're watching this on Wednesday. Hopefully you are. But I value that space for the career fair. I know they are intimidating. I never liked going to them as an undergrad, honestly, but forcing myself to go, really helped me kind of break out of my comfort zone, talk to more people. I actually, got information for an internship because of a career fair. And so that was really obviously helpful. So it can happen. I didn't get like the position because of the career fair, but I found out about that company because of it, and that's the type of internships they had. And then later, when I saw that same company on Handshake, I knew what they were about and what to look out for, and that was that travel agency that go abroad. So definitely go to career fairs, at least get an idea of who is out there and what types of things they're hiring. Get that nice practice of talking to strangers when it's uncomfortable. And I'm glad that we could have that overlapping space and time for class. So your task is to really just respond to the discussion post. That is how I will count your attendance for class today, is that you had a thoughtful, participation to those 3 discussion post questions. You need to do that before Friday at midnight. And as part of that, obviously this class activity was going through HYLY_B_ABD and start figuring out what the situation analysis is, so that way together we can write a campaign strategy. All right, I will see you next week.